Hey everyone, Nayashe here, and today I have a special treat for you. We are finally releasing the Maehwa guide. I will be splitting it up into episodes so that it is not extremely long for the average viewer, and they can pick and choose which sections that they're interested in watching. But in this particular episode, episode 1, we will first go over skills and add-ons. So I hope you enjoy. Make sure to check out the other episodes if you're interested in more Maehwa related content. In this section, we're going to be going over the skills for both the main and awakening kits that you should pick up and worry about, as well as the add-ons. So let's dive right in. So as far as skills go, you'll notice right away that I have 1,946 skill points. That is obviously a lot of skill points. Not the most, but quite a bit. It takes a while to build that kind of skill point value up. But just to quickly demonstrate all the different ones that I recommend you picking up, I'll be going over those really quickly in detail, but I also want to point out that I do have in the description links to different levels as well as skill point values that you might have to kind of give you perspective. So like this is level 56 with 372 skill points, level 57, 488 skill points, 58 with 654, 59 with 780, 60 with 1100, 60 with 1500, and then 60 with 1900 skill points to kind of give you a rough idea of how to build your Maehwa. These are just give you a rough idea. You don't have to follow it. You can do whatever you want, but it's just what I would recommend if you're trying to kind of emulate my style. So to get into what I have, the easiest way to go about this is just to go straight into the Awakening kit because it's the easiest. What I recommend is get everything. There's nothing in here that I wouldn't recommend. Tenacious Edge would be the only one, probably, besides Moonlight Dash, that you wouldn't need to skill up right away. So Tenacious Edge is relatively useless right now. It's a very niche situation in PvE only, pretty much, and I wouldn't even really use it in PvE. It's pretty much lost its value since it no longer has frontal guard. It still stiffs, but it's just not really that useful. Moonlight Dash was the other one that you could maybe get away without needing right away. It's okay in PvE, not really even that great, but in PvP it's kind of not really that good either. I do use it from time to time, but it's okay at best. It's not really that worth it. So if you needed to save yourself some skill points for a while until you had some spares, those could be some potentials that you can hold out on. Maybe even New Year's Eve as well, although every once in a while I use that in PvE. So especially for weaker packs, they explode weaker packs. But yeah, that wraps up the Awakening. Get everything else, the max level you can, as soon as you can. It's all going to be useful, especially for grinding and PvP. Now when we get to the main tree, this is where it gets a little bit more tricky. There's a lot of little things that you need to look out for, like which skills to lock. So we'll go over the lock skills first. Lock your forward roll, lock divider, because you're never really going to use that unless you're doing Tiger Blade Chase Cancel, at which point unlock it. But for a beginner guide or getting you into the class, lock it for now. You don't really need it. Lock your kicks. I have Roundhouse Kick. I will not recommend this. This is more of like for fun. I have it locked though for right now because I was playing with it earlier and I got annoyed with it. So don't worry about the kicks. Lock Carver if you don't plan on using Tiger Blade for combat for PvP. I do unlock it and lock it all the time. It depends on what I'm doing, so I only have it locked right now because I just wasn't using Tiger Blade for the moment. what I was doing earlier. But unlock it if you plan on using it. I wouldn't recommend it for actual combat in PvE, and you could use it in PvP, but it's like a super niche situation. But it's mostly for Carver that I would have it. And that's the only reason why I skilled it up. I'll go over that again in a minute though. Decapitate, go ahead and lock that. You don't ever want to use that. Skill's garbage right now. They need to buff it badly. Lock Cyclone Slash. We're still going to use it, but we're going to use it from the hotbar instead. If you lock it, that means it won't accidentally come out when you do Red Moon. But you can use it from the hotbar still, even though it's locked. So it's fine to do that. And then Rage Transfer would be the only other potential one to lock, but that's only if you're fat fingering the X key and accidentally doing a Rage Transfer when trying to do your Rebams. So you can unlock it, lock it, depending on how you feel about it. I would recommend locking it while you get used to the Rebams. Alright, so now to get into the skills to actually pick up. So Retaliation, just leave it as is. I'm eventually going to get it to Absolute, but I don't have the spare skill points yet, so for now, just leave it as is. This is like the last thing to pick up, basically, almost. Divider, I'm probably never going to level this up unless I just have no other skills I want to level up. I'll level up Retaliation before Divider, because I actually use Retaliation. Absolute Backstep Slash, I would pick this up. It's a very nifty skill to use. It has a down smash potential, but it stiffs. It is unprotected, but the main reason why I use it is for the utility slow, which I'll get into the slow stacking and crit stacking later on, probably in a different clip or a different video. But it's very useful. You get a negative 50% movement slow to your target for 10 seconds, and like I said, it also has a potential down smash. Very few of down smashes we have, so it's really nice. Blind Thrust, I would definitely get Absolute if you can. Minimum, get Blind Thrust 3. Blind Thrust is very useful. There's a lot of different things you can do with it, but it's a very risky engage skill, but it can be used effectively with the proper timing and skill. So some definitely to look into. Nemesis Slash, this is for PvE mostly and open world PvP. I don't really use this in PvP that often. It's mostly so if I'm in the middle of a fight and I need to heal and I don't have, my pots aren't being super effective, I can run up to a pack of mobs, use Nemesis Slash on them and heal up. Other than that, PvE wise, it's just for healing in between packs. Maehwa's Will, max this out as quickly as you can. Minimum, get Maehwa's Will 3 so that you can get the Rebam skill here. So Ultimate Maehwa's Will requires Blind Thrust 3 and Maehwa's Will 3 minimum, and that's a very useful Rebam to pick up. I'll go over that in more detail in a minute though. Blind Thrust, I would definitely pick this up. I use this in my combos for floating my opponent. After I get a stiff, the quickest way to float your opponent is Blind Slash. Red Moon does float too, and I do use that a lot as well, but it does have a little bit slower time period before it actually starts floating. So Blind Slash is faster, however it is unprotected, so something to note. Chase, max that out. No questions about that. If you stay at Chase 1, you won't be able to use it off cooldown or on cooldown. So don't stick on that one. If you get Chase 2, you'll be able to use it on cooldown, but you won't be able to do very good cancels with it anymore. Ultimate Chase is the only way. Whirlwind Cut, don't worry about that skill. You can level it up while you're leveling up your Maehwa, but get rid of all the points before you hit 56. It's not very useful after that. Lock the kicks. Don't even bother learning the kicks unless you want to play around with Roundhouse Kick for the knockdown effect, but I wouldn't recommend anyways for a newer player. Carver, I only leveled up for Tiger Blade mostly, but it does have a niche role in potentially floating your opponent if you're trying to really weave in and out of getting around their frontal guards. Very rarely that I actually use it for that, but it does have its uses. So I leveled this up mostly because it's one of my last skills to level up besides retaliation, so that's about the order I would recommend it. Close to last. Decapitation, don't even bother with it, like I mentioned before. The Dragon Bite combo, so Dragon Bite, Dragon Claw, and Lunar Slash, definitely max these out as soon as you can, especially early on. They're going to be one of your main ways to get through PvE. And it's also pretty decent in PvP as well. Not so much Lunar Slash, but Dragon Bite and Dragon Claw do pretty good in PvP. But even Dragon Claw sometimes I rarely use as well, so it really depends on the situation. If I don't have cooldowns kind of thing, it's very niche situation. But mostly Dragon Bite is our main form of engage, as well as Blind Thrust, as well as a few other skills, but definitely max that out for sure. At minimum, get 3 so that you can get the Reband skill, Blooming Step. And then we get Blooming. Make sure to at least get Blooming normal so that you can get Blooming Step as well. That's the other prerequisite. I would recommend Blooming Step over Stride, but Stride has its purposes too. But I'll go over that in more detail soon. I'm currently using normal Blooming. I am not using Phantom and Absolute. Mostly because I'm at a AP threshold where I don't really need the damage that's obtained from Blooming. I can kill just fine without it. So Blooming normal is much faster animation, and it gives you an iframe if you use it from the hotbar or slow cast it with keybinds. If you use it from hotbar, it always slow cast, so that's why you do the hotbar thing. So it could be a useful timed iframe. However, the slash is unprotected, so be careful with that. And then if you do the absolute, which I do recommend for lower AP players, it's also good in PvE. It is a longer animation. Stun's just the same, but it's harder to continue off of if you don't have a lot of attack speed, so just be careful with it. You can also use it at the end of a combo too. Say you Petal Bloom someone and they get down smash, you can back chase blooming them. It's nifty in that way, which I'll show in a combo video later. Red Moon, pick it up as much as you can. At level 60 you get absolute. Definitely get it. It's one of your main bread and butters for comboing both in PvE and PvE, so definitely pick that up. Ultimate, I would recommend getting it as soon as you have the spare points. The slow is pretty useful. It helps out with positioning against your opponent, so I would definitely get that. Ascension Heaven you don't need, however it is useful in some situations, specifically in PvE. It can be useful in PvP when you're out of cooldowns and you just need that little bit of extra damage. Ascension Heaven can do the trick for you, so I would definitely get that eventually. It is a lot of points for these two, so just be sparing. Cyclone Slash, definitely pick this up. At minimum, get level 1. I would recommend getting Absolute though eventually, but level 1 would be okay for a while. Tiger Blade is definitely useful. I would definitely pick it up when you get the spare skill points. It's mostly, for lower AP players, a form of travel, as well as dealing damage without being CC'd to structures and node wars and whatnot. But it does have its 1v1 potential, but that's mostly for higher AP players. So for Stub Arrow, I do something a little bit different than some people do, but I would recommend getting Absolute Stub Arrow as soon as you can. I do not learn double or triple shot because they are not as useful in my opinion. They have a much slower animation, so canceling the animation, you are fairly vulnerable. This is much faster to pull off, and you're less vulnerable. So I would stick to just Stub Arrow, and I'll demonstrate that stuff later. Probably in a different video. Grapple Arrow, it's more niche. I wouldn't really recommend it unless you just want to dork around with it, but it does have some potential uses. That video animation that it shows is actually old, so it's actually much faster than that now. It has its niche role in out positioning someone, and that's pretty much it. Doesn't really have much use beyond that. For charge stub arrow, I would definitely try to get at minimum charge stub arrow evasion. This is one of our few iframes that we have, which is a total of 4 if you want to include Tiger Blade. As far as useful iframes to use versus an opponent, it would be one of 3. So I would try to get this if you can. It's one of your main combat iframes that you're gonna try to use. I would definitely try to go for absolute eventually, but it's not really needed, honestly. Just a little bit of extra chip damage could be useful. Evasive Shots, I use it for some niche stuff, which I will show probably in a different video with all the arrow tricks, but I would at least get level 1. All it does beyond that is increases the damage like barely at all, but the main thing is the cooldown. So at 8 seconds, 7, 6, which if you have absolute charge stub arrow, they're both 6 seconds, so it kind of helps with that, which will show one of the combat tricks that I do with the arrows. Passives, pick up all the passes as soon as you can. These ones are fairly cheap, I think 3 points each or something like that, but definitely get it, especially the sword training as soon as you can. You can maybe get away without the maneuver training for a little bit, but I would definitely pick it up eventually. It may not seem like it's much, it's really not, plus 7% evasion versus melee. It will help though, a lot of the classes are melee, so I mean you got warrior, Kuno, ninja, some of the DK's abilities are melee. Tamer has both melee and magic damage, so I don't know how that really works with them. Maehwa, Musa, quite a few other classes. Zerker, Lawn, so yeah. It just helps mitigate some damage, even if it's just a little bit. Could save you. Especially if you go evasion. But as far as the other remaining ones, Infinite Mastery, definitely get this. Gives you a lot of free HP, as well as 2% accuracy, so it's very nice. And then Skilled Hunter, pick that up as soon as you can for PvE. If you're not doing PvE, you actually don't really need this, but I would definitely pick it up when you get the chance. And then, last but not least for skills, Ultimate Maehwa's Will, I would definitely pick up Ultimate Maehwa's Will over Crimson Gust. Crimson Gust is useful in the sense that it allows you to do a float, but its damage got severely nerfed a long time ago, so it is not as useful anymore as far as damage. Ultimate Maehwa's Will gives you a 30% crit buff. Both Crimson Gust and Maehwa's Will heal for 450. Both give you a magic DP plus 15 for 10 seconds. The main difference here is instead of damage, like real damage, Ultimate Maehwa's Will does a vacuum pull for mobs in PvE and also spins those targets that are spinnable so you can start doing back attack damage. So it's pretty useful in that regard. But mostly it's because of the quick animation that I recommend this for. And the crit bonus. The crit bonus is pretty useful. So, Blooming Step. Blooming Step and Blooming Stride both have frontal guard. They both do damage and both have down attack. Both stiff in PvE. However, Blooming Stride does more damage based on more hits. But the difference is Blooming Stride gives a DP bonus to you of plus 10 for 10 seconds. And all DP minus 20 to your opponent, so a DP shred, whereas Stride does not. And the other major difference is the distance that they both travel. Blooming Stride goes a lot farther, Blooming Step goes a lot farther than Stride. However, Stride will do more damage in PvE and PvP. So it's kind of up to you. When you have more AP, like I do, Stride can be arguably more beneficial in some PvE scenarios and PvP scenarios. But Step is just too much more useful with the DP shred, I feel. So up to you. I would recommend Step though. And last but not least, we'll get into the add-ons. So I've changed up my add-ons a lot. I've experimented with a number of different things. This is not the is-all be-all setup. It is my current setup that I like. I would recommend it. However, there are other things I would also recommend. So let me go over it real quick. I run Dragon Bite with crit and attack speed. This is so that when I catch them with a stiff with Dragon Bite, I get these bonuses, and then I can start comboing with these bonuses applied, and I'll just be that much more effective in my damage. I also do the same thing with Blind Slash. This is for redundancy. Sometimes I catch with Dragon Bite and then I Blind Slash, which then it would be redundant. But sometimes I don't catch them with Dragon Bite, but I just pull off a Blind Slash, and I want to make sure I have the same bonuses. I'm always trying to beef up my combo. That's what I'm doing here. So I do a lot of redundancy with that. And since I use Blind Slash a lot these days, it's definitely worth it for me to do this. For Red Moon, I would definitely pick up Red Moon. I have monster damage right here because I grind and PvP. So instead of this, you would do 15 AP if you were just PvP and attack speed. Or you could maybe even arguably go for the plus 15 defense. It's up to you. But I'm doing the monster damage for right now. But for PvP focus, I would definitely get the 15 AP for PvP. For the Awakening, you got Moonrise, PvP attack plus 10 and crit plus 20. This is so that I beef up my combo damage further. The crit would be redundant if I did any of these, but if I did Red Moon instead, then I will get the bonus for Moonrise. Otherwise, I'll have it anyways. So it's just to make sure that my Moonrise and Cloud Stab do the maximum damage output that it potentially can. A lot of redundancy. Same would go with Stigma. Stigma, I do 30% crit bonus for self, and then I do minus attack speed on my target, mostly because it doesn't give you an attack speed bonus for self. It does give you a movement speed bonus, which is kind of useful, but I find that if I want to create gaps on higher skilled players, lowering their attack speed will give me those opportunities. Some people do pain. I don't think pain damage is that effective anymore. People are just, they have too much AP, too much DP, and pain damage is, it's gonna like cut a pot in half, maybe, like not even like a third of a pot heal, but I don't really find that useful. But the crit bonus is for redundancy. If I get a Sigma and then I go straight into Moonrise, then I have a 30% crit bonus instead of 20. They don't override each other. Basically, the stronger one will override the weaker one, or the stronger one will maintain its duration over a weaker one. So having a 30% for 9 seconds, that's pretty huge. Same with the crit for 9 seconds over here. So these ones are all 9 seconds, so it's pretty good. And then you have December here, which is kind of the oddball one. Most people probably won't agree with it, but I'll go over the reason for it. December allows you to maintain a super armor, and when you're doing pedal drill on top of someone, you're trying to pressure them with damage as well as apply a movement speed slow, a 30% movement speed slow. Well, if you do December immediately after, even if it just nicks them, you get the accuracy bonus, which could be useful versus an evasion target, for example. And then you also get the movement speed debuff to target, so negative 10%. So with pedal drill, you do 30% movement speed debuff to your target, and then the add-on from December also does 10%. So you just effectively slowed them by 40% for at least 7 to 10 seconds. 7 seconds for 40%, and I think drill's slow lasts for 10 seconds, so 30% for that. An alternative to this would be, most of the time people would do a typical build where they go pedal drill and then they go 20 DP, because that'll give you a lot of extra defense. And then on top of that, it stacks with the 20 DP that you get from, or the 20 defense that you get from Red Moon, from just activating Red Moon. So you kind of get a little tanky there. I'm really squishy, so it's kind of irrelevant for me. And this would be the other setup that they typically do, is attack speed. So that's an alternative. I don't use my drill for defense. I would prefer the slows, because I'm all about positioning and out positioning my opponent. And large scale, there's definitely an argument to be made for drill's defense, because you are taking a lot of hits all the time from everywhere, so having more defense will help you survive. But yeah, this is my setup. Well, that concludes episode 1. Like I said before, if you're interested in checking out more of the Maehwa guide in the different sections, make sure to follow the links in the descriptions to get to those videos. Otherwise, if you thought this video was helpful, please give it a like, subscribe to my channel so you can get access to more future content. And make sure to check me out on Twitch. I've been streaming a lot lately, and we are now pretty active on Twitch. Typical days are Wednesday, Sunday, and I have some floater days that I try to weave in. But yeah, check us out. Give us a follow. Subscribe if you feel I'm worthy. But yeah, look forward to seeing you all next time.